Most people think financial security starts with earning more, but look at the numbers differently and a more interesting pattern appears. Your financial future is shaped not only by how much money comes in, but by how often you make decisions that quietly send it back out. In the UK, a pay rise can disappear into a nicer car, more expensive meals, extra subscriptions, frequent deliveries, and a lifestyle that expands almost automatically. None of these decisions looks financially disastrous on its own. That's what makes them so effective at draining wealth. Financially disciplined savers don't necessarily live miserable lives or refuse to spend money. They simply tend to avoid spending patterns that repeatedly produce little value while consuming future financial flexibility. And that's important because nobody can guarantee they'll become wealthy. Markets change, income changes, life happens. But you can improve the odds of becoming financially secure by removing predictable mistakes from your spending. In this video, we're looking at 9 spending mistakes that financially disciplined savers rarely make, and why avoiding them can be far more powerful than constantly searching for another way to earn more. Because sometimes, building wealth isn't about finding the perfect investment, it's about stopping your money from quietly disappearing. Number 1. They don't pay the loyalty penalty. There's a peculiarly British tax that nobody voted for and almost everybody pays. It's the price of staying still. In 2018, the Citizens' Advice Super Complaint put a figure on it. British consumers were handing over billions of British pounds a year simply for being loyal, for letting insurance policies auto-renew, for staying on the same broadband deal after the introductory rate expired, for never switching a mobile contract that finished paying off the handset years ago. Companies build their pricing around a bet that you won't bother, that the friction of switching, the 15 minutes on a comparison site, the mild awkwardness of leaving will outweigh the savings in your mind. And for most people, that bet pays off beautifully for the company. Wealthy savers treat that bet as insulting. When a renewal letter lands and the premium has crept up by 20% for no reason, they don't sigh and pay it. They spend the 15 minutes. The habit isn't that they're cheap, it's that they refuse to be charged for their own inaction. And the maths is unforgiving here. A £200 a year loyalty penalty across car insurance, home insurance, broadband and energy left unchallenged for a decade isn't £2,000. Once you account for what that money could have earned invested, it's closer to £3,000 you paid for the privilege of not opening your post. Number 2. They don't finance things that lose value. Here's a distinction that quietly separates the people who build wealth from the people who don't. It's not debt good versus debt bad, it's what the debt is attached to. Borrowing to buy something that grows or earns, a qualification, a tool that makes you money, can be perfectly rational. Borrowing to buy something that's worth less every single day you own it is a different animal entirely, and the clearest example in Britain is the car. The overwhelming majority of new cars in the UK are now bought on finance, most commonly through PCP deals. The appeal is obvious, a shiny car you couldn't otherwise afford for a manageable monthly figure. But look at what's actually happening. You're paying interest on an asset that's shedding value faster than you're paying it down. A new car can lose a huge chunk of its value the moment it leaves the forecourt, and you're financing that entire collapse. You've combined the 2 worst features money can have, depreciation and interest, and stapled them to your monthly outgoings for years. Wealthy people tend to do one of 2 things instead. They buy a car a few years old, letting someone else absorb that brutal first drop in value, and they own it outright, or pay it off fast. Or, if they do finance, they treat it as a rare exception, not the default way they acquire everything from cars to sofas to phones. The wealthy habit is simple. They let interest work for them on things that grow, and they refuse to let it compound against them on things that rot. Number 3. They notice the convenience premium. Modern spending is engineered so that the easiest option is almost never the cheapest one, and the gap between them has quietly become one of the biggest leaks in a typical British budget. Think about how many small premiums you pay purely to remove a tiny bit of friction. The delivery fee and service charge on a takeaway that costs nearly double what the same food would from the same kitchen if you collected it. The meal deal grabbed on autopilot, the single item ordered online with next-day delivery because walking felt like effort. None of these is a catastrophe on its own. That's exactly why they work.
Now, I'm not going to tell you convenience is always a waste. Sometimes your time genuinely is worth more than the premium, and paying to get it back is a smart trade. That's the point wealthy savers actually understand. They don't ban convenience, they price it. Before they pay extra to avoid effort, they ask, almost reflexively, whether this particular bit of ease is worth this particular cost. Most people never ask the question at all, which means they pay the premium every single time, whether it's worth it or not. The habit isn't frugality, it's noticing. Number 4, they don't smooth every purchase into a monthly payment. Something has changed in the way Britain shops, and it's changed fast. Buy now, pay later has gone from a niche option to a default button at nearly every checkout. Millions of UK adults now use it, a large share of them under 40, and on the surface it looks harmless, often no interest, just your purchase chopped into 3 or 4 tidy installments. But watch what it does to your brain. When a £120 pair of trainers becomes 4 payments of £30, the price register in your head resets. You stop evaluating whether the thing is worth £120, you start evaluating whether you can survive £30 a fortnight, and of course you can, so you say yes. Then you say yes again on the next thing and the next until you're managing a portfolio of small future payments with no clear sense of the total. The deeper problem is what this does across your whole financial life. Once everything becomes a monthly payment, the phone, the sofa, the car, the trainers, the holiday, your income arrives already spoken for. There's no slack, no room to save because every future pound is pre-committed to a past decision. Wealthy savers guard that slack fiercely. They'd rather wait, buy the thing outright, and keep their future income free. They know that the person with unspoken for income is the person who gets to say yes when a real opportunity appears. Number 5, they don't buy cheap things twice. The author Terry Pratchett wrote about a theory that explains a surprising amount of British spending. He called it the boots theory, told through a character named Sam Vimes. A rich man buys one pair of good boots for $50 that last a decade. A poor man can only ever afford $10 boots that fall apart in a season, so he buys pair after pair and ends up spending far more over those same 10 years, while still having wet feet the whole time. The trap isn't stupidity, it's the cash flow constraint of the moment. When you're stretched, the cheap option is the only one you can reach for, even when you know it's a false economy. But some people fall into the cheap thing habit even when they don't have to, buying the disposable version out of sheer reflex, replacing it forever. People with money, when they can, spend on the axis of cost per use rather than sticker price. A good coat worn for 8 winters, a decent pan that outlives 5 flimsy ones, a pair of shoes that can actually be repaired instead of binned. It looks like they're spending more up front, and they are, but run the total over years they've spent dramatically less and had better things the entire time. The instinct they've built is to ask not what does this cost, but what does this cost me per year I'll actually use it. Number 6, they don't let their spending chase their income. This is the one that catches high earners, which is why so many of them, embarrassingly, aren't wealthy. There's a well-documented pattern where the moment income rises, spending quietly rises to meet it. The pay rise turns into a nicer car, the bonus becomes a habit of nicer restaurants, the promotion becomes a lifestyle that costs exactly what the new salary pays, so the gap between earning and keeping never actually widens. This is often called lifestyle inflation, and the reason it's so dangerous is it's invisible. Nobody feels themselves getting used to a better life. It just becomes the new normal, and the new normal always seems to cost everything you have, no matter how much that is. This is how someone on a genuinely large salary can still be one missed paycheck from trouble. What wealthy savers do instead isn't glamorous. When their income goes up, they deliberately let some of that gap stay open. Not all of it, they enjoy their money too, but they treat a pay rise as partly a saving opportunity and partly a spending one, capturing a slice of every increase before their lifestyle can absorb it. Over a career, the person who banks even a third of every raise ends up in a completely different position from the person whose spending kept perfect pace with their earnings, even if they earned the exact same amount.
Number 7, they don't pay for the story a product tells about them. A large part of what we buy in Britain isn't function, it's signal. We're paying for what an object says about us, that we have taste, that we're doing well, that we belong to a certain group. And there is an entire industry brilliantly designed to charge a premium for that feeling. Now this is delicate because there's nothing wrong with wanting nice things. Enjoying a well-made object is one of the pleasures of having money. The mistake isn't buying quality, it's buying the badge and mistaking it for quality, paying a large multiple for a logo when the unbranded version is functionally identical, funding a marketing budget and a status signal rather than a better product. Here's the pattern that's genuinely counterintuitive. Research into actual wealthy households in a lot of markets finds they're frequently underbranded, not overbranded. The loudest status spending often comes from people trying to look wealthy, while people who actually are wealthy have less to prove and buy on merit. The habit isn't denying yourself nice things, it's being honest with yourself about when you're paying for the thing and when you're paying for the story, and being unwilling to pay a heavy premium just to broadcast a signal to strangers who aren't thinking about you anyway. Number 8, they don't buy in the heat of the moment. Almost every system that sells to you is optimized for one thing, collapsing the distance between wanting something and buying it. Saved card details, one-click checkout, limited time countdowns, only 2 left. The entire architecture is built to get you from impulse to purchase before the rational part of your brain can weigh in. And it works, because impulse buying isn't a character flaw, it's the predictable output of a system engineered to trigger it. The urge is real, it's manufactured, and fighting it with willpower in the moment is a losing game, because the moment is exactly where you're weakest. So wealthy savers tend not to fight it in the moment at all. They fight it earlier by installing friction. A rule that any non-essential purchase over a certain amount waits a set number of days before they're allowed to buy it, removing saved cards, so buying takes deliberate effort, unsubscribing from the marketing emails that manufacture the urge in the first place. The trick is that most impulses simply evaporate if you give them time. The thing you desperately wanted on Tuesday, you've often forgotten by Friday. By building in a delay, they let the urge die of natural causes, and they only buy the things they still want once the manufactured pressure has drained away. It's not more discipline, it's a smarter system that needs less of it. Number 9, they know where their money actually goes. This is the quiet foundation underneath all the others, and it's the one people resist hardest. Most people in the UK could not tell you within £100 what they spent last month and where it went, not because they're careless, but because money now leaves the account in dozens of small, frictionless, invisible taps and subscriptions, and the brain simply can't track that many streams by feel. There's a well-studied glitch here called mental accounting. We track money in rough, unreliable buckets in our heads, and those buckets are almost always wrong. We remember the big, obvious costs and completely lose the drip of small, recurring ones, the subscription you forgot you had, the 3 services that quietly renewed, the regular top-up that felt like nothing each time and added up to a fortune across the year. Wealthy savers close this gap by simply looking, not obsessively, not with a punishing spreadsheet, but regularly enough that no recurring cost survives unexamined. They know what leaves their account and roughly why. And that single habit, awareness, is what makes every other one on this list possible. You cannot cut a leak you can't see. You cannot resist a premium you never notice paying. Awareness is the master habit, because it's the one that lets you catch the other 8 while they're happening, rather than months after the money's gone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.